This is Reset. I'm Sasha-Ann Simons. We made it to Friday. And if, like me, you thought yesterday was Friday, well, give yourself a pat on the back just for hanging on. Anyway, we've got business to take care of. Time to catch you up on all the important details that you might have missed in your news feed this week. So let's go behind the headlines in our weekly news recap.
Congressman Jesus Chuy Garcia is going to run for mayor of Chicago again.
U.S. Rep. Sean Casten beat Republican challenger Keith Peacock, but it was not an easy night.
We have a lot to do in the very diverse 14th district.
Chicagoan Delia Ramirez becomes the first Latina headed to Congress from our area.
Here to help us make sense of all the things is Rick Pearson, chief political reporter for the Chicago Tribune. Happy Friday, Rick.
Is it Friday?
It is.
That's why I have a day watch.
Apparently it is. Also here, Brandon Pope, host of On the Block on WCIU Channel 26 and host of Season 4 of WBEZ's Making podcast. Welcome back, Brandon.
Great to be back as always. Good to see you.
On the line with us is Mike Flannery, political editor at Fox 32 News. Good to have you back on Reset, Mike.
TGIF.
Yeah.
Remember that you can now watch the weekly news recap live on the WBEZ Facebook and YouTube pages. So we're going to start with the mayor's race. Then we're going to make some sense of Tuesday's midterm elections. Newly reelected Congressman Chuy Garcia ended the will he, won't he saga, announcing that he will actually run for mayor. Mike, this wasn't exactly a surprise, was it?
No, he's been signaling after having, in the words of the mayor's campaign spokeswoman, after having dithered for weeks and months, he's now been signaling in the last few weeks that he's in, and the question is just how much money he will have. He does have a ready-made cadre of supporters and workers. I think despite the late start, he's already had people out collecting signatures. While many of the dozen or so candidates there are claiming to run for mayor, there are questions about whether they'll make the ballot. I think Congressman Garcia will make the ballot.
Yeah. Well, Garcia ran for mayor back in 2015. So your thoughts on his chances this time around?
Oh, I think he instantly vaults into the front rank of contenders, and he's and if he can get, he told me several months ago that one of the obstacles when he was thinking about this, one of the obstacles was raising the $5 to $7 million or even $8 million that he thinks is going to be needed. I mean, if he can pull that together, he might even become a front runner.
Yeah. Rick, do you think that he stands out from the other candidates?
Oh, I think he does. And part of it is that previous history that exists, as well as the fact that, as a leading Latino voice in Congress, here in Chicago, basically has created his own political machinery and has kind of the stature to make this run. And so the question I think becomes, though, is, he's a Bernie Sanders progressive, and how many progressives are there going to be in this race? Yeah. And I really think, the question now that, you've got some of these traditional labor unions that would have supported him they've already jumped to other people.
Yeah.
So I think this is the kind of the next machination of this is to see where the progressives, if they can unify behind a candidate.
I'm real fascinated by that myself. SEIU and the CTU both backing Brandon Johnson, another progressive. He's going to have a large volunteer base with those two alone and a treasure trove of money as well. So I'm like a lot of people, they talked about Chuy Garcia getting in this and it being a Chuy versus Lightfoot and a runoff.
Right.
With Brandon Johnson in there and looking at the resources he's going to have, you got to wonder what his lane's going to be here and if he can disrupt it. He's going to have the money to throw a few shots any way he wants to.
Yeah. Well, on that note, we're going to pivot to the midterms, right? Because that turned out to be a blue wave in Illinois, really, on Tuesday. Democrats had major wins throughout the state. We're going to take a closer look at some of the more important races, of course, but I want to get just your main takeaways from the results. I'll start with you, Rick.
One, Republicans in the state are on the verge of irrelevancy. They were poised to, at the very least, pick up a few legislative seats that might reduce the Democratic majorities in the General Assembly. They're going to be a vastly smaller minority in the Illinois legislature. They had the position to be able to try to at least keep what they had in the state Supreme Court. That went down the drain. And I think part of it really there are a number of factors here, but I think two major factors. One was their choice for a nominee for governor, and two, how abortion really became a significant factor in driving women, particularly suburban women, to the polls.
Which we suspected, but just to see it happen was something else. Mike, your thoughts?
Well, I'll just share with you. I had planned to come into the studio with you, but I ended up. I've been editing a late interview I did with State Representative Jim Durkin, the House Republican leader, who has fallen on his sword in the ancient tradition of taking the hit when you lose 4 seats when you were supposed to pick up 4 or 5 or 7, and he is. In the interview for tonight's program, he's just scathing. He blames Donald Trump. He says this became an election about Donald Trump and abortion, and the fact that voters in northern Illinois just didn't want a southern Illinois farmer who was a Donald Trump-endorsed candidate to be their governor. He says there has to be a fight between the pro-Trump and anti-Trump wing, for lack of a better characterization of that, and that fight has actually been going on for a couple of decades here. And the pro-Trump folks have won. The triumph of Darren Bailey over Richard Irvin seemed to seal that, and Durkin doesn't mince any words. He says, had Richard Irvin, the African-American mayor of Aurora, been the party's nominee, he thinks they would have done far better.
Interesting.
Those 5 congressional seats that Republicans dreamed of picking up, the 3 in the suburbs, plus the Nikki Budzinski seat in 13, and the Eric Sorensen versus Esther Joy King out in the Quad Cities in the 17th district, they got skunked. They lost them all. It wasn't just the Supreme Court where they got skunked, as Rick pointed out. It was a catastrophe for Illinois Republicans. And Durkin at least says he knows he'll be called a rhino. He says he's ready to embrace that.
Anyone here surprised that Durkin is stepping down as minority leader?
Not at all. But also it looks, too, that Dan McConkey, the Senate Republican leader, is being ousted.
They got to find a new way and a new path here.
Well, and I really think you can't underestimate the suburbs and the evolution of the suburbs.
Yeah.
And when you look at just, the collar counties were already turning. And here, DuPage County, which is where I grew up, was the hotbed of Republicanism in the state. It was the start of the firewall for Democrats in Cook County. You had the Republican votes in the collars.
And then Barack Obama happened.
Yes. And then, as well as a shift of demographics from it. But people used to say, some of the Republican leaders, it's like, well, we don't have to recruit them as Republicans here in DuPage. They came here because they were tired of Chicago Democrats. And that assumption is way, way gone now. And so the suburbs, now you've got, I believe, about 7 counties now with exurbs. You have Kendall County, DeKalb County, going for a Democrat for governor.
Well, let's talk about that 6th district race.
Right.
Why don't we? Sean Casten won there. It was recently redrawn, that district. Remind us where the district covers now.
Well, the district was primarily the old 6 where he won twice. He defeated Peter Roscom, who was a major player in the House Ways and Means Committee when he won. The old 6 was largely concentrated in DuPage County and the northwest suburbs. Because of redistricting in the census, when we lose a congressional seat, all the districts get changed. Democrats have the map-making power, and they basically combined the 6th with the existing 3rd, southwest. Instead of northwest, it went southwest, and it went more into Cook County. And so this was going to be a test for Kasten because it's a lot of the district was not his territory. I mean, Marie Newman's the incumbent in the current third and challenged him and lost in the primary there. And Pekow is mayor of Orland Park, so he's got a base in that South suburban area. But Pekow was a Trumpian, basically. And here again, you know, the suburbans are taking it out on Trumpism.
Yeah, and let's stick with the suburbs while we're here. Democrat Lauren Underwood won her third term in Congress. She was also in a redrawn district.
Everybody was in a redrawn district.
Yeah.
So and with,
makes it tougher.
And with Underwood too, she actually 2 years ago, as she's viewed as still a younger, bright star in the party, and frankly, the idea of her representing a district that was had McHenry County in it as an African American, I thought was pretty stunning.
Yeah.
But she almost lost 2 years ago. I mean, I think it was
close.
about under 1,000 votes.
It was razor thin.
Yeah.
And so there were concerns this time, too, in trying Democrats, are they going to get too cute in trying to maximize Democratic representation out of Illinois? And she did exceedingly well. And another suburban one is Bill Foster.
Yeah.
And I bring that up. Bill Foster's also of Naperville, like Lauren is. He was running against a woman named Catalina Loff. And for the Republican Trump crowd, she's the anti-AOC. She's young.
Fits the profile.
Yes, fits the profile. She was actually in Trump's videos during his renomination convention, the video convention.
Exactly.
That was held. And, you know, this is her second try for Congress and failed.
Yeah. This is Reset. I'm Sasha-Ann Simons. We're going behind the headlines in the weekly news recap with Rick Pearson of the Chicago Tribune, Mike Flannery of Fox 32 News, and Brandon Pope, who's host of On the Block on WCIU Channel 26. A reminder that you can now watch the weekly news recap live on the WBEZ Facebook and YouTube pages. You can leave us a comment or question. Talk to us in that YouTube chat box. We're already getting some compliments for Brandon's Black Panther shirt.
Y'all like that?
So if you're listening on the radio and you can't see that, go to YouTube.
Check us out.
Check us out. All right. So sticking with you for a moment here, Brandon. Chicago, nearly half of Chicago voters were assigned to new polling places. Was there confusion on Election Day?
Yeah, a lot of confusion. I heard a lot of different problems from people. There were two big ones. Early in the day, at some precincts, about 10 to 15 different precincts in Chicago, people only received one ballot. Now, if you voted, you know you get two ballots, and that second ballot's got the judges on it.
Yeah.
A lot of people weren't getting that in the morning. They corrected it later on, but that's a big faux pas. Another issue people were reporting, the pens being used. We got those Scantron sheets for voting now. People were being given Sharpies. Sharpies bleed through if you have it over the other ballot. And so that can impact how that ballot's going to come out.
Actually, it doesn't impact it.
Really?
It really doesn't. And the way that it overlays.
Yeah.
And in fact, State Board of Elections was suggesting that Sharpies are the preferable, but they said that the ballots are designed in mind of that bleed-through issue.
Interesting. Well, there was a lot of confusion at polling places about that.
Because they thought they were spoiling their second
about
page.
whether they're
exactly.
approved. Okay.
I mean, I had my ballot thrown out because they were like, "Oh, you can't."
You got to color in the lines,
exactly,
man.
Yeah. Well,
back to basics, right?
Mike, you have thoughts on this here?
Well, the Sharpie, as I understand it, the printer and the manufacturer of the system does recommend Sharpies, and while indeed it does bleed through, it's not double printed. It's just on one side for the candidates. So I don't think that's an issue. I know that was labeled by the local election officials here and in the suburbs as misinformation. I think as long as we were mentioning the courts earlier, I think it's worth pointing out that Judge Tim Evans survived a sort of half-hearted, faint-hearted effort to get voters to vote no on him. So he remains and has a new term as Chief Judge of the Cook County Circuit Court.
Brandon, a local political dynasty is back in the spotlight. I'm talking about Jonathan Jackson, who's the son of Civil rights activist Jesse Jackson, as we know, he easily won that first congressional district. Remind us who Jonathan Jackson is, though.
Yeah, Jonathan Jackson currently oversees Rainbow Push Coalition. He's part of this political dynasty, the great Reverend Jesse Jackson. What's been interesting here, this was not particularly a close race with the Republican challenger in Carlson, but of course we all followed that Illinois First, that pool of candidates, and Jonathan Jackson somehow survived that. He was not favored to win. There were other favorites there, and he was kind of seen as, many predicted that it wasn't going to work out for him because of that political dynasty aspect, and people thought voters want something different.
Well, and there were also concerns about his
and
brother,
also,
and how he
the big
left
one.
the seat.
Yeah.
And does that leave a bad
nepotism,
taste
things
in
like that? Yeah.
voters'
So
mind?
he got that seat now. He's now the first congressional congressman there, overtaking Bobby Rush's previous seat. And Bobby Rush has given his okay and kind of passed the torch in a sense.
Even though he didn't endorse him in the
Exactly.
primary.
Yeah, but who Bobby Rush endorsed didn't get that far in the race
Correct.
either. So
That's correct, yeah. Well, immigration activists, they also had reason to celebrate Tuesday. I'm talking about Delia Ramirez, who's now going to be the Midwest's first Latina heading to Congress.
And
right?
again, here's another interesting district here where it does take in, vast swatches of truly old conservative DuPage County. And you have a Latina congresswoman representing Wheaton, Illinois. Okay, as I said, this is a very interesting dynamic
and a progressive,
and a
supports
progressive
the Green New Deal.
Yes.
Like she's not your typical suburban would win a suburban race flat out when you think about it on paper. But
that agenda, and I was always curious too, and that goes back to the primary when she ran against Gil Villegas about because Gil seemed to be a more moderate to her progressive social agenda, and she swamped him, and so just a very interesting kind of collage is developing in these congressional districts.
Yeah.
Now, she's the daughter of Guatemalan immigrants. Her husband has DACA status as well. Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Ramirez. Tell us about Han Win, Rick, who's the state representative-elect here. Asian Americans here are celebrating as well.
Absolutely, and this is another factor to look at in the kind of the growth of the power of the Democratic Party here is in this diversity of candidates versus, as Jim Edgar said, you've got Republicans who are increasingly becoming the party of old white men and not adapting to the change in demographics. And with, Han Nguyen, a Vietnamese refugee who was not even the Democratic Party endorsed candidate for the seat. But, look at these beginnings as a refugee, graduates from Yale, graduate school at Harvard.
Harvard as well,
and
now he's going to represent Uptown, Lincoln Square,
Andersonville. And he does have a kind of a more progressive outlook on things, but it fits in with the district. And it's just, you are seeing, and Asian Americans too are becoming another growing factor here in the demographics that we saw coming from the census. And now they're starting to flex even more political might in the great makeup of Chicago and Illinois.
And I think it's fascinating seeing the turnout numbers from Gen Z and millennials. Many for years we've been saying millennials don't vote. Just look at Chicago, zoom in. 25 to 34-year-olds were the second largest voting bloc in the city.
I saw you tweet that with pride.
Oh, as a proud 30-year-old, I'm like, yeah, we did it.
Yes, my people.
It's going to be pivotal though going forward. Candidates have to look at these two blocks as crucial to winning their elections, I think.
Yeah, it's not just the races being decided in the senior assisted living facilities.
Right.
Well, but even though that's still a very dedicated voting bloc, but it's been incumbent upon both parties to try to reach out to younger voters because
voters are stepping out.
Yeah. They're energetic. They're passionate about the issues.
They're fed up.
That too. Yeah. It's a lot to be fed up about, no doubt.
Mike, over to you again. Sharon Chung is going to become the first Korean American in Illinois state legislature. Talk to us about how big of a deal it is for Illinois Democrats to be grabbing that seat.
Well, she symbolizes, the same thing, the rising influence of Korean and Asian Americans. She symbolizes the same sort of thing that Delia Ramirez does, the ascendancy of, not just the first Latina, but the second Hispanic member of Congress, and and underscoring what a rising force Hispanics are in local politics. If you want to look at the future, take a look at the enrollment in the Chicago public schools. Hispanics, Latinas are the largest ethnic group by a substantial margin now in the Chicago public schools, and increasingly that's what the future of Chicago will look like.
Yeah. And Chung, of course, is representing Bloomington Normal. Another big Democratic win. They maintained control of the state Supreme Court. How important was that, Rick?
That's ultra important. And I guess the one regret when you have an election like this where you've been bombarded by ads for governor and governor and governor and governor, and that's a statewide race, obviously. But this was an interesting fact, is that for years, since 1960s, the makeup of the Supreme Court was basically 4-3 Democrats. And this year, they redrew the 5 districts, redrew 2 districts. By the state constitution, Cook County has 3 state Supreme Court justices. So automatically Democrats get 3 seats. Right. With that, they redrew 2 of the districts, one that's North Suburban and Northwest, another district that's South Suburban, Southwest, and rural.
Yeah.
And there it was a matter of truly control of the Supreme Court. And Supreme Court, these days, the courts are becoming more and more political. It's kind of strange that you're supposed to be elected as on a partisan party, but then you become now you're a judge, so now you're not partisan anymore.
That's always been weird, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, there was an integrity in the system that is no longer there, I think, and so really, this is the first time you had candidates campaigning, talking about issues like abortion and things, where they would normally say, "Well, we're not really supposed to talk about things that could come before us."
That is true. Yeah, well, before we take a quick pause, leave us with this strong showing for Democrats. What do you all think it means for Donald Trump?
Okay, this has been something that people have been talking about a lot. Trump is allegedly going to be announcing or thinking about announcing next week. I do think the GOP has moved past candidate Trump. I think Trumpism's still there. But I think they'd like to look at how Ron DeSantis did in Florida. His strong performance. They're loving that right now. He's looked at as a potential guy that could go toe-to-toe with Trump. I think the GOP overall is wanting to move past him because look at what this red ripple looked like. It's supposed to be a red wave. It was kind of more of a ripple. So I think that's really what it is.
I think they'd like to.
Yeah. You think it's probably not possible, right?
Well, I think that's where their reckoning point is they have to decide. I mean, you are starting to see some major leaders in Washington on the Republican side saying it's time to put him in the rearview mirror. Look at the quality of candidates that he endorsed and how did they do? Okay,
all the election deniers.
Hold that thought. Rick Pearson with the Chicago Tribune, Mike Flannery from Fox 32 News, and Brandon Pope with WCIU Channel 26. They're going to stick around. We hope that you will too, because there's so much more news to get to. But first, we got to take a quick moment and check back in with Lisa Labez. The head of U.S. Customs and Border Protection is being forced out of his job.
Yeah, Sasha, Charles Magnus leads the nation's largest law enforcement agency, and 2 people familiar with this matter say Magnus was told to resign or be fired. He's been on the job less than a year. The ultimatum coming after Republican gains in midterm elections are likely to lead to more congressional scrutiny on border policy. The first days of the annual climate summit had few protests, but today in Egypt, there were several small demonstrations at the COP27. Protesters called for rich countries to compensate compensate developing nations for the impacts of climate change, also demanded the end of a pipeline project in Africa, and criticized leaders for not moving fast enough to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So Twitter has it's relaunched its premium service, this blue verification check mark label to anybody willing to pay $8 a month, but it is unavailable at the moment as the social media platform was flooded by a wave of imposter accounts approved by Twitter. Eli Lilly, Nintendo, Lockheed Martin, Musk's own Tesla, and SpaceX all were impersonated, as well as the accounts of various professional sports figures. It's 12:30 WBEZ.
Election day is over, but that doesn't mean the election news stops. We're breaking down the results with experts and tracking the latest updates. So keep listening to NPR News.
Right here at 91.5 WBEZ Chicago.
I'm Peter Sagal. It wasn't so much a red wave as a red spill from a coffee cup you didn't put the lid on firmly enough. Join us for even more punditry on the News Quiz from NPR. Saturday morning at 10 on WBEZ.
WBEZ is supported by Rosecrans, a provider of both addiction and mental health treatment. Rosecrans believes in treating the human being, not just the illness, expanding its mental health services throughout Chicagoland and in the city. Rosecrans.org, life's waiting. Also by ComEd, dedicated to upgrading the electric grid to support additional electric vehicle chargers for residents and businesses. More information can be found at ComEd.com/clean energy. ComEd, powering lives. Weather forecast for today, it's getting chillier out there. Yesterday was just glorious, but right now we're at 44 degrees at O'Hare, 53 at Midway, and 46 along the lakefront. We should be right around 40 degrees by 5 o'clock this afternoon. A few flurries overnight, a low of 31. A few flurries on Saturday, a high of 37. Sunshine and 39 on Sunday. 12:32 WBEZ.
This is Reset. I'm Sasha-Ann Simons. Before the break, we talked about Congressman Chuy Garcia jumping into the mayoral race. We also covered results from Tuesday's midterm elections, but there's more to get to.
Do you want to pay a little more to help fund the Cook County Forest Preserves?
What if President Biden decides not to run in 2024? Pritzker's name is certainly on many short lists.
The Workers' Rights Amendment. It hasn't been called yet. And the amendment essentially codifies in the Illinois Constitution the right for employees to organize and bargain collectively over things like wages, hours, and working conditions.
Our panel today, Rick Pearson, chief political reporter for the Chicago Tribune, Brandon Pope, host of On the Block on WCIU Channel 26 and host of Season 4 of WBEZ's Making podcast, and Mike Flannery, political editor at Fox 32 News. Remember, you can also watch the weekly news recap live on the WBEZ Facebook and YouTube pages. Mike, I want to take a look now at a couple of measures that were on the midterm ballot. A pro-labor constitutional amendment, which is called the Workers' Rights Amendment. That's still too close to call. So what are the details there?
Well, the details are that, in terms of why it's too close to call, is that the state constitution requires that any amendment to it must be approved by 60% of the voters or by an absolute majority, 50% plus one of those voting on the question. And so it appears that, tens of thousands of voters took a pass on it. Not clear why, even though it did say at the top of your ballot, it was at the top of the ballot, and it did say not voting could be construed as a negative vote on this because it will affect the ability of it to become law. But it was prompted, as I understand it, labor leaders started thinking about this when former Governor Bruce Rauner was pushing a right-to-work labor zones, economic development enterprise zones, where unions would have been weaker. This would the so-called right-to-work laws that are in effect in Indiana, just about all of our neighboring states, and they make it more difficult for unions both to organize, to collect dues. And generally leave them much weaker than in a place like Illinois. So this would have codified in the state constitution the right to collectively bargain and would have made it impossible to pass a right-to-work law in the General Assembly. To pass one, if this does become part of the Constitution, another constitutional amendment would be needed to enact right-to-work.
The unions do say that they have the votes, that this has passed.
And they're declaring victory.
Yes, part of the problem is the vote counting that is being done by the Associated Press. But that having been said, one of the issues, and the last time Labor had an amendment, proposed constitutional amendment, was the lockbox amendment for transportation, and that passed overwhelmingly to make sure money is spent on taxes at the gas pump go to actually do the roads. This one, they put a lot of money behind, and it became very close. And part of it was the opposition, which is rooted in people that were supportive of Governor Bruce Rauner and his anti-labor agenda, were trying to sell that this would result in a property tax increase because of its effect on public service union workers. And the figures that they were touting were just the normal rate of increase in property taxes. It had nothing to do with any
They've
kind
been
of
calling it a hidden tax hike.
But there was nothing behind it at all. But still, the best way to try to defeat something is say, hey, it's going to raise your taxes.
Yeah. Well, and the question I think is going to hang in the balance until maybe until next week. Vote by mail ballots can still come in until November 22nd, but the union leaders and officials argue that all they need is about 55% in order to surpass that 50% plus one requirement of all those who voted on the question.
Mm-hmm. Just real quick on this, too, I want to say there probably will be some, assuming this becomes part of the Constitution, there probably will be court cases down the line to challenge just how sweeping it is when it comes, because it's not just the right to collectively bargain for normal things like salary and wages, but also kind of environmental conditions and safety conditions, things that I think the courts are going to have to maybe step in at some point to decide.
Let's hear from our friends on YouTube who are also chiming in on the Workers' Rights Amendment. D-Farm says this is just another example of labor's overreach in Illinois. The current Constitution has doomed Illinois to ever fix its pension hole. Chicago 675 says we don't need it. I hope it doesn't pass. It's only for public sector workers. And Paige Smith says, as a lifetime culinary worker, my love of cooking led me through journeys of financial and emotional abuse. Workers' rights. Lots of exclamation marks. Moving on, Brandon. Cook County voters approved a slight property tax increase for the forest preserve. Details?
Very slight, 0.25% increase there. Cook County property taxes. People like their wildlife in Cook County is what it looks like. The vote was 68.2 with 99% reporting, not completely counted yet, but that's pretty resounding there. And so this is the first property tax increase that the forest reserves have been asking for since the 1930s. They were trying to hit that point pretty hard, put a lot of money into trying to get the word out about this. This impacts, hiking trails, signs. They want to use this to try to make things more energy efficient, help with endangered species. You got the Brookfield Zoo, of course, Chicago Botanical Garden, all under the forest preserve. So looks like Cook County voters overall said, it amounts to $1.66 a month, about $20 a year. So they said, hey, I'll give that up.
I didn't see a single negative opposition, no organized opposition to it.
I think we can all get behind, good forests and wildlife, right?
Kind of seems like cruel to...
kind of non-controversial, you think, right?
Right. Help me out here, Rick. Some other ballot measures that might have gone unnoticed by a lot of us. 3 downstate counties voted about seceding from Illinois and forming a new state.
Always. That always happens.
Quick as you can with this one.
Yeah, okay. I mean, this is an offshoot of the Darren Bailey stuff. I mean, Bailey, when he was, as a member of the legislature, co-sponsored a resolution saying Chicago should be spun off from the rest of the state. This is a part of the Eastern Bloc of very conservative legislators in Springfield that are Bailey supporters. Bailey's a member of. And this is, again, kind of I mean, there's no validity to this at all, but it should be concerning for everybody that, part of the strength of this state is its diversity. And there is a block of downstate that's now ruby red that just says, we're tired of Chicago and its progressive politics dictating its values on us, which are more conservative.
Yeah.
And I do think there might be some value in just, taking a step back and realizing that, everybody should have a voice. And even as, as ridiculous as this sounds. But I do think it does describe kind of we are a state of two states here in Illinois.
Yeah. Well, J.B. Pritzker, double-digit win on Tuesday. He had some asking whether he might be eyeing an even higher office. That's the President of the United States. But here's what he had to say.
I am not focused on that at all. I am focused on serving as governor for the next 4 years. It's really the most important thing to me is we have a lot of challenges that Illinois needs to overcome. We've got to work hard on it, and I'll be doing that.
All right, so he's not focused on that at all. Still, though, there's a lot of speculation. Your thoughts on Pritzker's presidential ambitions?
Well, if anybody watched the speech that he gave in declaring victory.
Quite a speech.
Yes.
It sounded very 2024.
And it went far beyond, as I said, it went far beyond the Great River on one end and the Great Lake on the other side of the state. The contours were national. And he actually went on to say the next day after that clip that he commits to planning to serve as governor.
Yeah.
I think what's very fascinating about Pritzker as a 2024 candidate, Joe Biden right now is very wishy-washy whether he's going to do 2024, and that delays how soon these candidates who'd like to step in for 2024 could fundraise. J.B. Pritzker doesn't have to worry about that. That man can fund his own campaign. So I think that makes him really viable as a candidate if he does decide to run in 2024. He's obviously saying what he's going to say and what he's supposed to say as the current governor.
And also, don't forget, like he was in Florida, he was in New Hampshire,
all those visits were very peculiar.
And quite frankly, helping to be able to use your money to pick your opponent, and cast a weak opponent. You don't have to worry about campaigning that much in person for governor when you lose the luxury of trying to float your name.
Well, what do you think, Mike? Do you think Pritzker's committed to finishing his term?
No. I mean, Rick, you were there at that news conference. He took great pains. It was almost comical. It was like a Saturday Night Live sketch. He found different constructions to seem to be saying that he was going to stay for 4 years. I commit to planning to stay for 4 years.
And we were all laughing at him as he was doing this.
He may have paid a consultant $100,000 to come up with all those different ways of not saying I commit hard and fast not to running for president.
I commit to planning. I love it.
Imagine Battle of the Governors 2024, DeSantis versus Pritzker. That could be a thing.
You never know.
You never know.
All right. Another pause. Mike Flannery, political editor at Fox 32 News, Rick Pearson, chief political reporter for the Chicago Tribune, and Brandon Pope of WCIU Channel 26. They're going to stick around. Much more news to get to. But first, President Biden says it's more urgent than ever to increase commitments to fighting global warming. Here's Lisa.
Sasha, speaking at the COP27 Climate Summit, Mr. Biden today says new spending on clean energy initiatives is cementing the U.S.'s role in this effort. The president's attendance at the conference is his first stop on an around-the-world trip. He'll also go to Cambodia for a meeting of Southeast Asian leaders, and then he'll make a stop in Indonesia for a Group of 20 summit meeting. Wall Street is largely holding on to its big surge from a day before. Stock indexes are mixed today to keep them on track for a strong gain for this week. Bond trading, though, is closed on this Veterans Day. Crypto prices sank again after a major trading exchange filed for bankruptcy protection. And a temporary memorial has opened today for the victims of the July 4th shooting in north suburban Highland Park. The memorial is a rose garden next to City Hall and just a few blocks away from where other temporary memorials were set up by residents in the immediate wake of that shooting. The garden includes 7 plaques, each with the name of a victim, words, and a photo chosen by their families. It's 12:44, and this is WBEZ.
On the next Science Friday, outgoing public health chief Dr. Anthony Fauci with advice for his successor.
You have to stick with the science, the evidence, and the data, and do whatever you can to get the best of the best involved in the field for which you are responsible.
Hear the whole interview on Science Friday from WNYC Studios.
Science Friday, today at 1 on WBEZ Chicago.
WBEZ is a community effort. Tens of thousands of listeners give what they can, and their financial support ensures that accurate, reliable news is here for all who need it. This is listener-supported WBEZ.
WBEZ is supported by the Poetry Foundation, presenting Diana Solis and Cuentros, an exhibition of photographs and ephemera exploring Chicago literary communities in the 70s through the 90s. Details are at poetryfoundation.org. Support is provided by Rogers Park Montessori School, working to fulfill the Montessori mission of peace, community, and education for children ages 2 to 14. Open house events November 18th and December 9th, rpmschool.org. And by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Illinois, committed to being a true partner by advancing and simplifying the healthcare experience for its members and communities. Blue Cross, Blue Shield of Illinois, through it all. 44 degrees. Temperature will be dropping ever so slightly this afternoon. This is WBEZ.
And we're back now with more Reset. I'm your host, Sasha-Ann Simons. If you're just tuning in, it's our weekly news recap where we make sense of the top local and state stories from recent days. Before the break, we were going over the results from the midterm election. And still with us, Chicago journalists Mike Flannery, Rick Pearson, and Brandon Pope. Over to you, Mike. We're going to turn to city news. Chicago City Council approved Mayor Lightfoot's 2023 budget on Monday, but not with overwhelming support, though. What were some of the criticisms?
Well, I think it boils down to criticisms of, there was the substantive criticism, but I think undergirding it all was the fact that a number of aldermen have jumped into the mayoral campaign themselves and have sided with other candidates, and I think there is a sense that the mayor may well be a one-termer. On top of it all, she proudly says that she doesn't buy votes. She certainly, she doesn't offer. By that she means she doesn't offer the sort of projects and ward level spending that previous mayors did. Mm-hmm. But she is certainly one who punishes those who vote no, and is willing to and often seems to pick fights with people who might be natural allies. And Susan Sadlowski Garza being at the Chuy Garcia announcement this week underscores that. She had been a close ally of Lori Lightfoot, but kind of just had it with the mayor. Yeah. The criticism often boiled down to not enough spending in some of the either in projects that are important to local wards or to projects that for ideological reasons people are behind. The mayor was willing to engage on some of that. But then there are other aldermen who say that she doesn't return calls, that, she's cast them into the outer darkness, perceives them as enemies, and which is a departure from Rich Daley and Rahm Emanuel. They did engage with even harsh critics at budget time.
Yeah.
Not Mayor Lightfoot's strategy, not her style.
Brandon, switching gears here, the mayor's race won't be the only race that's going on in Chicago in 2023, right? Plans for NASCAR's street race weekend, that's scheduled for next 4th of July, and it's moving into high gear. Tickets went on sale yesterday. How much are these premium tickets going for?
Woo-wee. Well, if you want just a ticket.
Sounds like a lot, Brandon. You're scaring me.
They start at about $400. So if you... Yeah, I know. That's quite an investment. Now, if you really want to make an experience of it, though, $3,000 to $5,000 for the premium suite package overlooking Grant Park. If you got that kind of cash, you're a big fan of NASCAR, Go for it. This is obviously a race that people are a little passionately upset about.
Have we all decided where we're going to be, not in Chicago on the 4th of July?
Look, I'm going to be honest. I'm not a NASCAR guy, but I kind of want to just be there just to see what it's going to be like.
To see how it wrecks up.
Exactly. Right? Literally.
After 2 weeks of traffic being wrecked up in the city to set this
traffic's
thing up.
Going to be a disaster.
Mike, are you shocked that this is going to be happening?
I don't know if I'm shocked. I'm surprised. I think Mayor Lightfoot deserves some kudos for bringing them in. it has irritated, aggravated, and perhaps cost her some votes in the immediate environs there.
Yeah.
The downtown aldermen, those adjacent both near south and near north, as well as Brenda and Riley right downtown, don't like it because their residents have the same reaction that Rick has. You know, where are we going to go for those 2 weeks?
Exactly.
Our friends on YouTube have the same reaction as Rick as well.
Yeah.
Chicago 675 says, I'm getting out of town for a NASCAR weekend.
Hey,
For
I
sure.
think it's going to be a heck of a spectacle, though, if you just think about it. It's the city's beautiful. I still have people who recollect the night that Barack Obama in 2008 was elected, and when he was first elected, and how beautiful the city looked.
Yeah.
And you get those same shots during Lollapalooza, and this will be one more opportunity to show off that incredible lakefront.
Yeah, except if you're going to do a real world-class event, you do world-class racing. You do Formula One cars. You get an international audience.
Jane Byrne wanted to bring in
a
NASCAR Grand Prix, Monte Carlo.
Yes, that's what you
Grand Prix rally.
But that's what we're going to have with street cars. I mean, come on. It's NASCAR. This is not,
It's something I never would have predicted would come to Chicago anytime soon, and here it is.
It's a reason for Darren Bailey to keep that condo in the handcuffs.
Maybe he will.
And he'll be selling tickets for more than $400,
that's
I'm
for
sure.
All right, well, let's steer the conversation over to something very different.
Nice.
Changing gears.
Smooth.
Changing gears here. Yeah, controversy led to hundreds of students protesting and walking out of class at Chicago's Jones College Prep. Briefly tell us what happened there, Brandon.
Yeah, Jones College Prep, a student wore a German soldier costume and made some hand gestures that many viewed as anti-Semitic. Let's be honest, they were. They looked like some Hail Hitler type of salutes. The controversy, though, is that, obviously, students were upset about this. The principal kind of downplayed it in an email to parents, kind of said, I don't think that was his intent. And now that principal has been removed from his principal duties as they investigate his handling of the case. And students they're going to voice their opinion. And they sat in not just the first floor, the second floor, the entire lobby.
I got emails from students.
Yeah.
Political. No, but I mean, and I appreciate that they were passionate enough to reach out about this.
Yeah.
These kids organized. They sure do.
Okay, more disturbing news. This from the far north Rogers Park neighborhood. This one involved a school bus.
You see the rise of Jewish hate going around the country. Hate crimes are up, and this is just concerning news. A group of men, they boarded a school bus reportedly carrying Jewish children, yelled different anti-Semitic slurs at them, gave the Hitler salute. That according to the Simon Wiesenthal Center. The CPD, they're investigating. They have yet to confirm those details officially, but that's what the Wiesenthal Center is saying. Chicago Commission on Human Relations, they reported hate crimes targeting Jews are up 75% of the city. So when you see something like that happen, you hear Kyrie Irving with his stuff and Kanye West, you're seeing this rise of anti-Jewish sentiment.
It all seems to bubble up at the same time, too, right?
Yeah, just really sad to see. And to target kids, too.
Yeah.
Just really unfortunate.
That's insane. One more of these types of stories here, Brandon. Unfortunately, Chicago Southside's construction's been temporarily halted at the Obama Presidential Center. What happened there?
Yeah, the Lakeside Alliance is a black-owned construction firm. They've been tasked with building the Obama Center. They saw a noose. They reported a noose being there. They're obviously upset about that. So what they're doing, they don't know who did it. They're trying to figure that out.
Okay.
They're holding racial sensitivity and bias training, and so they suspended construction on that Jackson Park Center indefinitely, offering a $100,000 reward to anyone who knows any information. This under the backdrop, Hyde Park, that area recently had some whites-only signs posted along. People reported that. Turns out there was a performing artist, a black woman, who was behind that.
Right.
But the neighborhood is on edge now because of stuff like that. And then you see a noose like that.
Yeah.
It just raises that level of concern as we get that CPD report that hate crimes on black Chicagoans are up as well. So really scary stuff there.
Well, I want to turn to something that is not a local story, folks. But as journalists, I do want to get your thoughts on Twitter because we can't ignore it. There's a lot happening right now. We use Twitter a lot. It's the social media platform of choice for a lot of us working in media. But a lot of changes are happening right now under Elon Musk. So, Brandon, are you going to keep tweeting?
I will keep tweeting as long as people are there to see the tweets and the community is still there. Because ultimately,
they're leaving. My followers are dropping like flies.
Really?
Yeah.
It's about community. And it's just disconcerting that it seems like Elon Musk doesn't understand what verification is about. It's not a status symbol as some have made it into. It's about confirming that what these people are saying is actually coming from them. I don't know if you've seen the recent examples of people making fake accounts.
Yeah.
And they got their verified check mark. Mm-hmm. There was a fake Rudy Giuliani account talking about Nancy Pelosi got them things thinging. Like, you got some wild, and people were taking it and believing it. You got Eli Lilly, a fake Eli Lilly account talking about insulin's free for everybody, and people are running with it. So this is the danger that Elon Musk has created.
What'd you say there, Mike?
There was a fake Tesla Motors account.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. I'm seeing here Twitter paused allowing people to buy check marks as athletes like LeBron James, politicians like President Biden, former President George Bush, as well as Arizona's Republican candidate for governor, Carrie Lake, corporate brands like Eli Lilly. They were all impersonated.
Yeah.
Well, Rick, you and Brandon, myself, we all have the blue check marks. Mike, you don't have the blue check mark, even though you have more followers than any of us, 26,000.
But I'm a very infrequent user of it.
But do you think that you would cough up $8 a month?
No way, no way. But I will say the other thing that is strange about this, guys, is he's now saying, Elon Musk is now saying that Twitter's losing billions. We knew it might not be very profitable, but and yet he spent $44 billion for it. I mean, it all sounds crazy.
What concerns me most, misinformation, especially around election time. It's just bad timing.
I think it's headed. It's headed downhill. It's headed to the ash heap here.
I'm not going to pay $8.
Yeah, I didn't think you would.
I'm gonna laugh at folks that do.
No, it's as you've said, verification was to let people know you're the one. And these days, with all the misinformation, that was a way
That's
to
important.
Putting our words to what we do is an essence of journalism. We're responsible for that.
Yeah.
And then to have this. And I would like to have $44 billion to just set in a pile and burn like leaves.
Well, I got to give a shout out to the folks online again. Shamrock Bloom says Elon Musk is a troll. I hope he loses his investment, and sorry for the employees he's firing and denying them their pay and bonuses. And someone, Mike, you like this one. Chicago 675 started a new hashtag Flannery should be verified.
Yes.
We gotta leave it there, guys. Mike Flannery, political editor at Fox 32 News, Rick Pearson, chief political reporter for the Chicago Tribune, and Brandon Pope, host of On the Block, that's airing on WCIU Channel 26. He's also host of Season 4 of WBEZ's Making podcast, out now. Thank you for joining us.
Great to be here.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you to all of you who were chatting with us in the comments section. If you did miss the visuals, remember you can head over to Facebook or YouTube and catch up over the weekend. That's it for Reset. Monday on the show, it is chaos in the tech world. We're going to dive into the slew of layoffs from giants like Meta and even startups here in Chicago. We're also going to learn how the potential meltdown of Twitter could impact vibrant online communities. You don't want to miss that conversation. I'm Sasha-Ann Simons. Thank you for listening. Thank you for hanging around. Have a great weekend and stay warm, will ya? We'll meet again soon.